So welcome to the WOW Empress Coast Intentional Journal Readings. And during this segment, it is all about aligning with your true dominion destiny, really for this life phase. It's all about helping you to unlock your life codes so that you really know how you should move forward in the present. Now, I have a motto for this segment. I always say that your new now destiny codes aren't found in the stars or in the cards, but they are in the life codes. And one of the things that we do during this segment is we focus on decoding and recoding one's life to really align with their highest divine destiny trajectory, using the simple practice of intentional journaling, because this process provides these prompts and triggers, and they're really what I call the extraction factor in terms of being able to extract from the divine encoding what is relevant to bring forth, so that people have their own unique information about their true life's design, so they know how to move forward accordingly during this life phase. So I am the WOW Empress AliNICOLE WOW. And as always, during this segment, I am joined by my STAR Queen Celebrity-preneur Protégé, Gina Gardiner. And we're going to be doing intentional journal readings and just allowing whatever journals come up during this time to be featured. And then we'll provide some wisdom and insight from those particular journals. Now, during this time, we actually don't have like a core theme that we're working with for this particular segment. One will just emerge and arise as we move forward during this time. But we're creating this sacred space now so that we can be present to receive the wisdom and the insight in terms of what is going to be most relevant and helpful for those who are going to be partaking and participating in this particular experience. Gina, as always, thank you so much for being with me.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm always so insightful. I'm always amazed at how things just seem to flow and click together.
They do, don't they? They always do. It just weaves in like a perfect tapestry, in the sense that things just come together. And so, before we get started, of course, I love to do deep breathing and to take the time, to get present. But before we do that, is there anything initially that's coming up for you, just in terms of how you feel about the space today? Anything that you're excited about, or anything you feel that people most need to know during this time? Maybe can provide a trigger for us before we actually get started.
I think what strikes me, I don't know about the news in the US, but the moment there is such a lot of fear and a sense of division, and there's so much going on out there that the conversations that I've overheard or people have been having with me are all about, I feel helpless, I don't know what I can do, I know I want to do something. And I think perhaps maybe that will come up in terms of the only thing you have control over is you.
Right.
And even if you think that you're not doing something physical, energetically, there's always things that you can do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, because really that is so profound, even during this time, is that people need to go inward, in a sense, to know exactly what they need to do in terms of how they conduct their own affairs, and then how they too can make an impact and bring contribution to whatever they feel called to. So that has a lot to do with the life codes, right? And being able to extract those codes so that you know what you need to do for this life phase, how you should be. And in your beingness, then that will give you the wisdom and insight in terms of what your doingness should be. Right. And so when we marry both the being and the doingness, then we have a cohesive, right, inspired functionality that takes place. So I'm glad that I got present enough in the moment to ask you to actually provide some context to see what you were feeling, because that was just great. And that's, I believe, a really good jumping point for us to actually bring it to really the core focus of what these segments are all about, is being able to get into your own wisdom and your own information. And I think that that has been really the, I guess, the biggest overlooked aspect in terms of the human development, in a sense, and in this newer context, is that people are really looking outside of themselves for answers, or they're looking to their head for what to do, instead of really turning inwardly and connecting and being present in that space and that source wisdom that's within, to give.
It's really interesting. So sorry, I thought you finished.
No, you go ahead.
What strikes me is that we should have been called human doings and not human
Yeah, instead of human beings, right?
Because the immediate response, I think, for the vast majority of people, and I have to say, until very recently, was true of me, that I would look for what can I do rather than what can I be.
Yeah. And that's what most people, you're right. And the thing about it is that our true nature is supposed to be the beingness.
Yeah.
But what it is that we have adopted conditionings to form a new identity as the doings. So originally, no, we shouldn't actually been called human doings. That's just what we started doing. but our true intent is the human beings and the beingness, and the beingness is a way of existing, right? And living from that place. And then within that beingness, that's where we learn the accurate ways to do. Because when we get into the human doingness, we're not always being guided by right inspired actions, being in spirit, inspiration to do the things that are going to be in the best interest from a holistic perspective, because there's action that takes place and is going on, but it doesn't always mean that those actions are the best suited actions for every scenario. And so one thing we know is that when people are operating out of fear, fear and love do not coexist in the same vibration, right? And so they are very opposite, polarity, or so, if you will. And so when anytime decisions are being made from fear already, that's a misalignment. And so when we start thinking from a fearful place, what do I need to do? Like I said, that's a misalignment. That's not really being in the true connection of all is well and the higher source connection. And again, this doesn't mean that people are putting their heads in the sand and not facing some aspects of reality, but ultimately we're here to start creating new realities. Now, how do we do that? Each person has to start with themselves and knowing themselves and being more intentional about the way we're being in this human experience and this spiritual experience, really combining it into one divine experience. And so that's why, even going back to the whole context around what this segment is really about, with the alignment of the true dominion destiny. So what does dominion, when you think about the word dominion, what does dominion mean to you, Gina? What does dominion mean to you?
It means a number of things, but I think dominion for me is having power over, power within. I mean, in the old context, when you had dominion over, it was usually referring to having dominion over somebody else, having control and power over someone else. But I have come to the realization and the belief that when we're talking about dominion within the context of our destiny, it is actually owning our own power, owning our
absolutely
being
right,
authentic.
Absolutely, and to be able to to create that. And that's why even within my motto, so that no one thinks I'm knocking any other type of paradigm or perspective, when I say that your dominion destiny is not found in the stars or in the cards, it's in the life codes. So some people may think, well, I use certain things to help with triggers and it's been beneficial to me, and everything. Well, that's a level, and maybe that is helping you to a certain extent with future preparations or just different things. But when we're talking about ultimately being the creator of your own unique experience and getting into your own information, that will not be found in the astrology or the tarot or things like that, because that's a collective body of experiences or wisdom or so that's come from some other place or so. Your own unique design and your encoding is going to be found within what's within you and then brought out. And that is what be considered the oracle from within, in a sense, that you can then look and then make decisions based on your unique template, not something that someone else can pull and get the same thing as you. And then, even though it can be speaking uniquely to you, but when it's your own information, when it's your own life codes, your life codes are going to speak to you about your unique situation and give you the process through intentional journaling to be able to track that. So on the note of this, before we start really getting into this, let's connect and let's take about 3 deep breaths, please.
Okay.
Okay, yes, thank you. All right, so dominion, because now I feel called to talk about dominion for a moment. And Gina, thank you so much, because your working definition of what that meant to you, it is perfect, because I identify with that and I resonate with that. And that really is the context in which should be the premise that others take away from this as well. The dominion of having power, having authority to be the designer of your destiny at this level, because we've each experienced different levels of destiny. Somewhere where we were at one point, that we evolved and had a journey and then arrived at a certain point of destination would be considered a destiny. So an example of that is when you were in school and you wanted to go to college one day, you went through the journey of going to school, and then the arrival point from that journey was then to get to college and then to have that experience. So along the way, you were able to shape and make different decisions that would line you up for that experience of entry level into that part of the journey. Whether it was you kept your grades a certain way, or you did certain things, or you had to apply, that was a journey. So you played a part in creating that level of your, of your destiny. So we like to look at simple, practical aspects like that to start bridging from that, but now looking at it in a higher context, being more in a spiritual perception, from a divine perception of saying, okay, my divine dominion, meaning I have mastery in my divinity at this point to now be an authority enough to start creating my world on a completely different level. How does this happen now? Now this happens not just from a template that was given that we follow from success from the world to say we should do this way. Now it's your unique information of how you construct your life and design your life according to your unique blueprint with these codes. So that's what the intentional journaling aspect brings us to. So now to come back to what Gina was talking about earlier in terms of what she had been hearing and getting a sense of, from other people, of people wanting to know what do they need to do, because there's a lot of different things going on in the world, and a lot of fear-based energy. But really during this time is where it's a higher call to the love-based energy, a higher call to good stewardship with our lives. And again, what do we do? Gina said it brilliantly. You can only be responsible for you. So if you are responsible for being the best version of you, That is the journey and the path in which you should be immersed in during this time. Is the immersion, the intentional immersion into this better version of you. And we've actually done a segment kind of around that, about the immersion in the value of you, or something, around that context at one point. But I think it's very important, during this time, is immersion, intentional immersion into the life codes. And from that premise, people will know what right inspired actions do they need to take, so they know what to do to improve their own lives, in a sense, and then what are their contributions. So those are two strands that we can work from. So Gina, how do you kind of feel about that?
That feels absolutely right to me. And that when you come from that place, not only do you have access to all of your own inner resources, but you're going to make decisions that are based on something which is positive and will move you and others forward. If you come from a place of fear, then you're closing things up. People become very territorial, they become aggressive. Right. And that does nobody any good. And
oh, absolutely not. And then you allow people to have dominion. You're allowing something to have dominion over you, versus you having dominion of your own world. Absolutely. And being that authority. So if fear is the dominion that you are allowing to reign supreme, well, then understand that love and the higher vibrations of light and possibilities and different things can't coexist within that strand of understanding. So when we now understand that there's so much going on, so if you feel that it's a dark time in the world, that means there's a higher call to what? Light, right?
Yeah.
And Gina actually has a publication around leadership for that, and I contributed, to that with a forward for, it's time to become a beacon of new light and hope. There you go. Yes, of a beacon of light and hope. Yeah. And so with that coming up, Gina, if there's something within that particular journal, or just the feeling or the energy around it, then, you get present with that. And as you're getting present, what I will do is just remind those listening that during these particular segments, if you've never been a part of this type of experience, we feature a lot of different journals. We have a lot of different journals that are present, and we don't feature them all, but whichever ones come up, just like how you just organically witness this coming up. This is a journal that wants to be a part of this experience today. So you'll see kind of a flow of just that organicness happening as these different publications come up. And we'll just see how that goes. So, okay, Gina.
So I've just opened the book at random, and this is what's popped up. It's time to make an active choice. Which route are you prepared to take? Will you choose the route of greater enlightenment and step into the light, or will you succumb to the lower vibration of desperation, despair, and hopelessness? Those who choose to illuminate the way for others must be mindful that many will be attracted by the light and the hope they offer. The way to enlightenment is challenging, so it's vital that the enlightened leaders stand strong for themselves and others, no matter how uncomfortable it may feel. They'll need to protect themselves so the pull of the lower energies around them does not drag them down. Resisting old patterns of belief or conditioning, wanting to fit in or to gain approval, are some of the pitfalls which can so easily result in a drop of vibration.
Wow. How on point is that? Just even based on how this whole segment got started, right?
Yeah.
And now what we've been talking about. And so continue to keep that present for a moment. Because bring it up for me, please. So let me just get you to hold that there just for a few moments, because even with on the cover, there's light that's breaking through those clouds. You know, we can see that. So I want you to turn and look at it and look at that real quick, your cover. And so you see you see the light that's coming through the clouds.
Yes.
Yes. And so sometimes when life seems to be cloudy, or people are have their thoughts and it seems to be clouded, they have to pay attention, because there's always a subtle of light. And you talked about the enlightenment aspect, and where people needed to focus on the active choice that you mentioned. And that goes back to what we were talking about as well, is that, you know, you do have to choose how you're going to flow your focus. If you can't be in fear and love at the same time, which means you have to make an active choice where you're going to direct your attention and your vibration. And even when it comes to dominion, which strand of dominion are you going to flow to? Are you going to flow to what can have dominion over you, or what you are able to actively participate in your own creation of being that divine authority of your own experience to now create from that place? So in order to do that, there has to be the vibration and the awareness of what Gina was talking about, even in terms of the enlightenment. So it is in the times of what seems to be dark and the dismal times is where you have to focus more on the light, because the solutions to any scenario are going to be found in enlightenment, in the light. And the thing about it is the darkness is really an incubation place for growth. And so even when we see the world, different things going on, there are yet but more conception for birth, for new birth. And so instead of looking to what the problems are, simultaneously what is existing is the solution right there. And you know how they say that the answer to a question is really within the question, in a sense. If we get present with it, it's already there, it's already present. And new light and new hope and solutions are always present, but it's where we're tuning ourselves into. What frequency are we aligning with? But if we look too much to the problem and also to the confusion, like, I don't know what to do, what should I do? That's not really flowing the energy into the light. It may seem like that's because you're asking the question or you want to do something, but again, it's where you're coming from in terms of asking that. So let me make some distinctions here, just to put this in more of a grander context or framework. So like within intentional journaling and a lot of the publications that we have, some of them will have questions and their triggers. But the questioning and the prompting around this is to evoke something from within with more of a solution-based format. Where versus when you're just asking kind of randomly, like, I don't know what to do, what should I do? That's a different vibration. That's not intentional in terms of really trying to get to higher solutions. It is, I'm asking for solutions in the sense, but the frequency in which you are syncing up to ask it is completely different. And that's why a lot of times people don't actually get the answers to certain questions, because the place where they're coming from, which is in that doing vibration, versus the aspect of the beingness and allowing those answers to surface from within versus trying to really receive something external. Gina, I know you follow that tremendously.
I do.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I mean, you're using a different part of the brain.
Yes.
Left brain, it's where your logic is, but ultimately logic only takes you so far, and it tends to see an either or and catastrophize. You get into your right brain thinking, where your creativity and your solution finding.
Right, exactly. That's the creator energy, like you said it. The left brain aspect, in a sense, can then take you into lunacy. And, and where you can overthink, or you can get too much to the point you drive yourself crazy. And then those who have to witness your going throughs can ultimately kind of drive them bananas as well. And so, and I say that in the most humorous yet serious way as well.
Yeah.
But, but yeah, so the logic sometimes does not serve, because the logic can't really bridge you into the, if you want to call it supernatural awareness, the divine awareness. And there is a difference between divinity and even spirituality, or divinity and just, you know, trying to be logical and rational, you know, in a sense. All of it plays a part together and can, but it has to be in its rightful place. And so if you don't have the balance, or just everything aligned, you know, correctly for an ultimate result that's going to be beneficial, then yeah, that left brain logic, then, like I said, sends you over to the loony farm. And
it's not designed,
going on.
it's not designed to look for solutions.
Right.
And you talked about balance, and I think, you know, both ways of thinking have their place, and there are times when it's very important to use data and logic. But when you're coming from a place of fear, the logic tends to be skewed anyway, because it's based on catastrophe.
Right.
What can I do? It's all going wrong. It's dark. It's bleak. I don't know what to do. And it's interesting, you start off this session, as you do so often, by breathing. And one of the quickest ways to slow your heart down, to actually bridge the gap between your left brain thinking and your right brain thinking, is to do some deep breathing, and just slow everything down and allow yourself to access a type of thinking which is much more resourceful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was well stated. Yeah, that is so very much important, because it's not enough of that going on. And intentional breathing, and making that connection, and being in spirit, and again, taking right inspired actions, since most people are wanting to know what they should do, is that you better get in the inspiration. And when I say the inspiration, that means the in spirit, in the divine part, so that you are making those decisions. I have a work where I talk about the God formula, and this is not in a religious context. It is an acronym, and the God stands for good orderly directions. So, great orderly directions. All right. So when you can use and leverage that formula and come from that place, that's the higher authority and higher source power connection to make those right decisions, to make the orderly decisions that are going to be in alignment for your highest and best good. So when we tie this into the life codes, okay, so in the life codes is where it's like the bloodline, and it's very much why even Christ, where Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Because one thing he understood is that in the I am energy, in the I am vibration, you will find the way. You find the way, you're going to connect to the truth. You combine those, then what do you have? You have the life, and those are the codes. And so when you can ultimately get into that I am place, that divine place, that's where you can then have that dominion to start now creating your destiny, divine destiny, according to these codes. So that's why we come back to the journaling and getting present and being intentional with this, where you can bring forth your own information again and be able to read and track from what comes from within you. You'll know, and you'll get to witness, as I often say, simultaneously, the old brain and the new brain are so kind of working together, and then allowing what's most relevant to come up, and then be able to start kind of directing your life, you know, and decoding to recode your life anew. So going back to this journal, you know, with Gina, her journal here, and this new light that's breaking forth through the clouds, okay? Like anything in life, just like we think about our weather, so there can't be sunshine all the time because the growth of the planet and vegetation and all the different things need the rain, right? So there are going to be things within our lives and within the world that will go on that just seem so unfortunate, but like the rain or storms that come in, they have a purpose. And what we have to do is be connected to what that purpose is. But first identifying what it means for you as an individual. And then when you can grasp what that is, now what does that mean in terms of a contribution in whatever format to the world at large or to others that are in your sphere of influence? So if you're going to be a beacon of light and hope, that means that there has to be an embracing and embodiment of what those two aspects, those two core elements, or virtues, if you will, what those really mean. What does it mean for you to be the light? Well, you can't be the light if you're focused on the darkness, because the light comes in, and the light is the light regardless. Now it can be the light in darkness, right? But it's not focused on the darkness. It is focused on being the light. So even like with solutions, when you get a light bulb or aha, you can't get that light bulb and aha if you are flowing so much in the focus of the fear or the darkness, right? Even though it may invite you to bring forth some new solutions because it's presenting itself, but you have to realize why it's presenting itself. We have to have a different perception around what we believe is dark and dismal. You know, a plant, when it's in the ground, it's in the soil, it is in the darkness and is growing roots so they can spring forth. When you think about photography, when a picture is taken, at least in the older context, you know, a picture is developed, those negatives or whatever are developed in the darkness. When a baby is in a womb, it is in the darkness, then breaks forth into the light of the world, right? It comes into the light, but for so long. So anytime we feel that we are in a dark place, that's the time to go within and to focus on the light, to illuminate. And there's a context that's been used throughout the years. I have several publications on it too that talk about the dark night of the soul. I call it the soul's illumination process, because it's where you turn in to discover the light. And then the light does bring illumination to some of the challenges and different things, but then ultimately also showing you solutions or a new way to be, helping you to make the shifts. And so I want to go back to the journal really quick, Gina's journal, in terms of when she mentioned about the active choice. Okay.
Yeah.
So all of this is about the active choice to participate in creating your reality. You have a choice to create it. There's a saying that says you can create your life by divine design, or you can create it by default, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to design it? Or is it life by design, or is it going to be life by default? So that's an active choice that you get to choose how you're going to be. But the one thing that we want to bring up today, again, is that, but the way you're going to find that information is, again, going back to the life codes. So I love the fact that this particular journal seems to be kind of the star of, you know, of this segment at this point, because that's where you're going to find hope for yourself, is hope in a newer life that you can provide for yourself in the present. And then from there, you can help to know how you can best contribute, you know, to others. But you have to be that beacon for yourself first. And then as you're that beacon for yourself, as you're being the beacon for yourself, it's going to be illuminating for others, even if you aren't intentionally doing that to make an impact. There's something about when you are in your beingness the people who are around you are going to be impacted by that, because they're going to notice. They can't help but notice that there's something different going on, that there's a light. And by focusing on you during this time, then you're able to provide that light for others, and they can see it, and that gives them the hope. And then you can really think about how you can expand that. So Gina, do you want to talk about that a little bit before we actually segue to maybe see if another journal or so, comes up?
I think that's it. For me, that's really crucial.
Mm.
And I think it's important to make the distinction. If you were currently in the Ukraine being bombed, you are actually in that crisis. Even there, you can choose how you are going to engage with your life on a day-by-day basis. And even under that duress, choosing to be so fearful that you are impotent, that you can't operate, isn't going to serve you or anybody else. But the vast majority of us are not facing those terrible conditions. And whilst it is true for people in whatever circumstance that, if you simply give in to this is hopeless, then that's your reality. There is no way forward. There is no way. And so I think I wanted to make the distinction, because people listening to this may say, well, but what about people who are in dire times? And people who are in dire times, you look at, some of the quotes I've used have been from the Second World War, from Winston Churchill, when times were desperate. London was being bombed. There was destruction. There wasn't enough food. But he recognized that he had to be strong. He had to be a beacon of light and hope for everyone, because that gave people momentum. It gave people a reason to keep going. Right. And I think that in those situations, you're talking about a version of this, and it's just as true. Yes, it is. For the number of people who are on antidepressants and who don't like their life and who are unhappy or unfulfilled, you have a choice. And part of that is to look to be the beacon of light, that glimmer of light which says, however bad today has been, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, and tomorrow's a new day, and I can have a new start. Absolutely. And that new start, to even build momentum into what you were saying, the new start starts right here in this moment, the new now moment. Moment by moment, isn't it? It is a choice, consciously or not. Exactly. The problem, so many people do not recognize that it's their choice. They just drift, assuming that life happens to them. Not for them or through them. And the thing about it is, when we sit and really, when we sit and just think, for sure, distress does not serve. No. The fear-based energy in that way does not serve. It's like the spirit of worry. Worrying is like, let's say, a rocking chair. It is rocking back and forth, but it isn't going anywhere. No. And it's like expecting it to be an express train, that you're sitting in there and that you're working and you're rocking harder and harder and harder because you want it to go faster. Right. And that's where the lunacy comes in. Sorry. That is where, when we go back to the logic and trying to understand that, that's where, as I said, it can slip you into the lunacy, factor, is that you have inaccuracy in terms of thought around the scenario. So we know that a rocking chair is not going to get up and go. Unless it is put on something that will make it go, transport. But then it stops being just a rocking chair, doesn't it? Right, exactly. Or if it's put up into a pickup truck or somewhere and it's transported, but that is not the rocking chair itself going anywhere on its own accord. That means someone had to come and take it and put it somewhere and now take it, transport it, right? But it within itself
it's not it because it's designed is to give you motion, right?
Yes.
And not just sitting it just, in a still position or so. It's designed for that. So we have to look at life and the different aspects. What are certain things designed for? Now, when we look at the context of fear and worry or so, if it had any type of design in any purpose to serve, I would definitely say it is the purpose for shift. It is the purpose for focus, shift, meaning it's there to invite you to shift into a higher vibration. It's there to invite you, like contrast or anything. What is it serving for? So if there is fear or there's anxiety around something, then it should be the invitation to, yes, a solution. But keep in mind, you can't stay in that frequency in order to actually access the solution. So sometimes hard times, they say, what is it? The mother of invention is
necessity is the mother of invention.
right. And so, right. So the necessity came for a reason, because it wanted to do what? It wanted to give birth to an invention, but it did not come so it could just be there for the sake of being there to get unraveled. It came for a higher purpose. So anytime we have things that come up and challenge us, and even things in world crisis, you have to ask, so this is happening for, not like why, in the sense of it's distressful. What is it the higher call to? Because anytime that there are things that go on, then people start to create new solutions. Or what it is it shines the light on where maybe they didn't have some things in place or things that could have been, or however, it then starts a journey of new preparation. It starts a journey of other people becoming more unified, helping in different places. So things come to bring about new order for the higher and best good. How do we build better? How do we build more effectively? How are we more prepared for different things that could possibly occur? So things are continuously giving birth. And that's where, even within the life codes, we have to allow the pressures of life to press us like a diamond so that we can extract the higher wisdom and intentionality to do what? To be more in our divine authority, to create our lives by design, not by default, and to be intentional with the life codes. So going back to now, what has been kind of an emerging theme throughout this particular segment is, I mentioned about being intentional about immersing into the life codes. Because when you immerse into the life codes, again, going back to the way, the truth, and the life, right? Bringing those equations. What is it that I do? I'm not sure what I should be doing right now. Well, get into the divine energy so you could connect to what that way is. When you understand that way can be the path or the method or however, then the truth of that will bring that illumination to the alignment. What is right for you during this time? The way, the truth, and then ultimately that brings about the life manifestation, plays out from that equation. But all of that is the life codes. And so just going back even to the journal, the STAR journal at this point, that, Gina's journal, is when it says it is time, that's an indication of where you need to be during this time. It is time to become. Become is a journey. It's beingness and evolution meeting. Become, becoming in a sense. Okay, light and hope. So that's the thing about being intentional, is about being intentional of being the light during this time for yourself, and then being that hope for yourself, and then bringing that about. Because if you're in fear and worry, you can't help anyone anyway. You can't even help yourself, right? Yeah. So, and then if you're entertaining people who are also in that same vibration, if you yourself are not elevated, then you can't really provide any context for them. What you'll do is join in on that frequency, and on that, and then it just creates more momentum. And then we wonder why we don't have much change in the world. Well, because of what's being flowed out in a ripple effect chronically and more consistently from people who are focusing on problematic states, then focusing on their becoming, their being and evolution marrying together to be those higher solutions. So Gina, do you have anything else you want to share from your publication, or do we want to get present with?
Not from mine, but I think it's probably the publication that that I consistently go back to of yours, which is called A Fresh New Start with God.
Oh, yes.
It's the one that I've spent a lot of time in, because maybe it's simply because of where I'm at, but it just seems so relevant.
Yes, so bring that up again, and then also let us know the subtitle of that particular one. Now,
it's called A Fresh New Start with God, an inspirational journal for rediscovering your true connection to source power and life purpose.
So he is being very hopeful in a sense, because he is praying. You know, we can see that he's, whatever state he's in, he is praying. And because it is a fresh new start, really that fresh new start is daily. Every moment that we have is a new connection point, and to discover more of our truth, right? And when we discover more of our truth, then we get into more of the life, to that new life energy, which we need flowing constantly, and to be in that connectivity, state. So allow you to get present, with that, and just if anything that you feel guided to share.
Well, I'd like to share the excerpt that's on the back.
Okay.
You were created in the image of God and have been predestined for greatness. I want to read that again, and I want people to really listen to this. You were created in the image of God and have been predestined for greatness. And God in this context is not about a particular religion. For me, it's the infinite source.
Yes.
As you reconnect to God from a higher vantage point at this life phase, you'll discover that your process becomes more simplified and less religious. You will begin to understand your unique journey through source, God's definition, and perspective about you on new levels like never before. You will learn more about your own information of truth through your unique life's blueprint for living your life according to the divine plan.
Wow. Ooh, so let's take a deep breath on that. Wow, that was loaded. I'm glad you were guided to that.
It's been nudging at me.
It hasn't really been like it. It's like I'm over here.
I'm here.
Yeah. But it comes in at the perfect timing on the heels of what we've just been talking about, which was important to kind of expand the awareness around the light and the hope, and then bringing it ultimately to this connection point, which goes back to, being in spirit, inspiration, divinity, and connecting to that divinity so that we can have the dominion to create, the reality. That's where the immersion, the intentional immersion in the life codes has to be, because it's in there that you're going to find that connection. And then within what you were sharing, in terms of the excerpt, is knowing who we are created in the image of, and knowing that we've been given a hope and a future, that we're predestined. And actually, even in the Bible, Jeremiah 29:11 talks about being able to understand that we're not put in situations to harm us, that we are given a hope and a future. And even though it may seem like times are challenging and different things that people go through, but again, why are we going through them, and how are we going through them? And it's not to harm us, but to bring us to an expected end, which is the destiny. And ultimately, those of us who are still here, and able to have these new moments that we create this new life. That's what we're here to do. But we have to do it from the image, the true nature of who we are. That's why it's important to have the reconnection, to have the discovery consistently, so that you understand the power and authority that you have, and that you don't have to succumb to certain, certain things. You can then be the one to decode and recode your reality. So Gina, get present with that, again, because that's very potent just in terms of the vibration, obviously.
Yeah.
And, if there's anything else, or you feel guided to read that again, or just anything else from that, before we move forward.
So once we consistently acknowledge this, we'll be able to experience joy, freedom, and fulfillment in all areas of our lives. And most of all, be demonstrations of the power and masters of our divinity as this new start with God continuously unfolds.
Wow. Amazing. And again, we never know what journals are going to pop out, and we never know where we're going to be guided, but it just demonstrates. And that's the thing within what you just shared. It says that so we can be demonstrators of this authority, in a sense. That's basically what it means. When you have divine dominion of your destiny, of your now, okay, you are demonstrating the source connection. You are demonstrating the God force, again, as Gina mentioned, in terms of infinite intelligence, not boxing it into any type of dogma or type of religious framework, any type of structure, just the truth of what that expression is that we spring forth from, right?
Yes.
So in understanding that, we come from that, which we have to be connected and consistently connected at a higher vantage point to then know how to have the God formula, the good orderly direction, or the great orderly direction, to be able to, conduct our lives. So that was very profound, just in terms of how that came up and when it came up, to tie it back into what's going to be where we start from, what's most important, so that we can be the light of the world, so to speak, and to then be the hope merchants that we're here to be, but to ourselves first.
Absolutely. I think it's worth saying, if you're engaging with this for the first time and you've not been involved in any of our other sessions, the reason that we chuckled is so often there is such I'm surrounded by boxes of journals with no idea. There are 8 boxes of journals here, and I had no idea. I had said to AliNICOLE before we started, what are we going to start with? Because sometimes we have a starting premise, but we didn't. And yet the flow, the current that runs in these sessions is just so beautiful that when something comes up and it is just so opposite, we're forced to chuckle.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you may wonder why, but I think it's important because that's part of the divinity.
Absolutely. And then that's what's being demonstrated, right? And being open and being fluid enough and flexible enough to be sensitive to what needs to emerge. And the process does take on a life of itself, because like different journals, come up at different times, and sometimes featuring tons of them. And then sometimes ones just like the one that we started with, that really wants to be wanted to be at least at that time, more of the highlight focus. Then, we could start, going from there. So yeah, it is a very unique and just divine occurrence, each and every time. So, all right, Gina, so I'll allow you to be present if there are any other ones that are coming up, or if we just, continue the dialogue around what we've been talking about, or the 2 journals that have presented themselves so far.
There isn't anything that's particularly jumping out at the moment.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. And so what I'll have you to do, actually bring those two journals up if you don't mind. So get you to bring them a little bit closer. Give me an opportunity just to be a little bit more present with the vibration here. This is interesting because there's like a union of a union of this. And so read to me the subtitle of yours.
It's how to become an illuminating, enlightened leader and light the way in challenging times.
Right. So the illumination factor is coming up, and I mentioned earlier about, you know, what the process of what most call the dark night of the soul, and I call it the soul's illumination journey. So
if you look at this, the guy on the photograph of yours, he is, look at the light on his face and his hand.
Absolutely.
There is a spot, there is an illumination.
There is illumination, and the illumination during this time of intentionality is really about illuminating the source from within. Yeah. And so he's getting his connection, right, to the source. And that's why you see the light, the enlightenment. So that's when I was saying that there's something like a union with these two publications at this time. And but the illumination is illuminating the source within. That's where the immersion needs to happen. The intentional immersion into the life codes is really the intentional immersion into the illumination that will then reveal, you know, more of the life codes. That's what's happening with that gentleman, is as he is in prayer, as he is in connection in his rediscovering part. He is, as Gina pointed out, you can see the light on his face. And again, because he's making that connection and making that connection to go within, is illuminating the God within, or the divine essence within, that infinite intelligence, that then will awaken more of that truth and then be able to help him make decisions. And that just means just in general. So when we think about, you know, prayer or communion, in a sense, because there are different levels of it. When we are communing with source or connecting, that's more of a beingness, relational. Most of the time when people are in prayer, they're typically asking for something, you know, or, well, we give thanks. There's different things, there's different levels of it. Yeah. But if we just use just the connotation just around being in, you know, being in prayer, but when we shift it to being connected and being in a way of beingness, you're going to get the wisdom and insight that comes to you in terms of how you need to conduct. And that is a form of prayer, but it's just in a different vibration. And I believe that that is the shift in illumination that people can come to understand, is, again, the place where you're coming from, how you're doing things. Your whole life is a prayer of intention, in a sense, but not from a, oh, I need this, oh, I need that, you know, type of thing, where we understand all needs are met within. And do you still ask? Oh, absolutely. But there's just a different way in which it's done. So when we look out in the world and we feel the need, you know, to pray, we also have to be mindful where we're coming from with that intention, where we're coming from with, you know, with that prayer. And are you praying, believing and knowing and feeling secure and feeling provided for, you know, even in the midst of trouble? Because in the midst of what seems to be trouble is where the vibration is actually even ever more present. And again, but people have to sync up to that, knowing that it's very much more present there. So regardless of whether you're going through anything or not, you have to really press into and immerse yourself in, from an intentional standpoint, into the life pool of this infinite wisdom. So Gina, you have anything you want to add to that, or anything you want to say, or get present to see if anything else comes up?
I think that, you know, this view that many people pray because that's what they do, but a lot of people pray because they are under duress and they want something not to happen or something to happen. And when they go into prayer, as you say, in that vibration, it's the vibration of lack, it's the vibration of desperation. And it's very different when you go into prayer or to meditation or just introspection from a place of knowing and believing.
Yes.
And I think for many people, that's a shift that has still to happen.
Right. That's something that needs to be illuminated
They
during this.
will discover that there is a whole different outcome to what they're doing.
Absolutely. Right. Because it does make a huge difference. And being able to be more hopeful, if you will, in a very new vibration and more enlightened in a very new vibration brings this type of awareness and illumination, and it helps people to understand too sometimes why it seems like prayers go unanswered, or it seems like different things don't shift and don't change. You know, and sometimes you can pray in that way and you do get some results, but from a consistent standpoint, you have to really come from the higher vibration of the knowingness. And the connection to that, because if you sync up with that vibration, then you're going to ultimately get the result. It's going to yield that, because it's like striking oil in a sense, or you are putting in a certain code, and that code's it's going to open up. But when we don't access the right alignment for certain specifics, then we're not going to get, you know, a specific a result that we desire. And in this newer experience, because everything is calibrated and it's very much coded, we do have to sync up with the right codes, but the codes come from one's life experience, you know, and being able to unlock that, decode what those messages are. Then with that new information, that's where you can speak that into your reality and recode it, or start putting the actions, taking the actions to put the right things in place to start, you know, recoding your reality anew. That's how you ultimately take in dominion, divine dominion, to design your destiny, you know, anew. And so all of this is very vital in terms of the understanding, because without the awareness of the truths, then, and the awareness is just a starting point, right? Because we know awareness alone just won't do anything. Awareness alone will not do anything. It makes you aware, but ultimately, what are the actions that you're going to take with the awareness? And then what do you start to do with it? But it is important to have the awareness so that then you can get the understanding, and from that understanding, then, you know, obviously take the right divine inspired actions.
Well, I think what you are offering people is a way of being that opens up the possibilities, and ultimately they will have to make a choice, an active.
That active choice you talked about. Yeah. Right. That active choice. And from there, again, that's when you can really start to take the good orderly or great orderly directions and then create from there. That's building with solidness versus building with sticks and straws, like the two unwise pigs. You know, when you can build the solid foundation and with bricks, so to speak, then when the big bad wolves of life or different things come, you will be fortified. See, we run into fear, into different things when we are not properly fortified. Whether it's spiritually, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, whether it's different things, because we go into fear when we don't feel secure. But we can shore up ourselves again by going inwardly, discovering what the life codes are, and then allowing those codes. So you think about a combination, right? With the combination lock that has numbers. if it's 33, 17, 54, you can't put in 54, 33, 17.
No.
You know, so you have to put those in. And in this newer energy of life, and you've heard me say this chronically, consistently, several times, Gina, about the new way does not allow anyone to be lazy in their processes.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, we have to be extremely intentional and
Yeah.
very much aware to understand what are those life codes. So even when it comes to whether it's prayer or just or different things, even setting intentions, so to speak, what are the life codes, for that? Because life will give more life. Life will give more life. And so what I mean by that is we go back to the way, the truth, and the life. Well, it already starts with the life, even when we're connecting to the way and the truth, but we ultimately get the manifestation in the life playing out in those codes. But the code is the way, the truth, the life. You connect to the way, it will illuminate the truth. You combine those, and then you've got the life manifestation that's going to be, to your highest desire. But all of that is within the divine codes. And again, going back to what Jesus said, what Christ said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am is the higher supreme energy. And that's the embodiment that we're here to play out, just like what Gina read from the back of the journal. Created in that image. Created in that image means that we're an extension, an offspring, so to speak, that can operate in that same capacity, but yet in a human format, which will have some limitations, obviously, but that divine essence is that you connect to that, then you discover the way, that is the path, that is how you go. It will illuminate the truth of the matter, which contains abundance of wisdom for so many different levels. You take those and then you construct your life according to that. You've accessed the higher life codes, and that's what you want to live from, because that's going to be the only place you actually can live from. So that's the illumination factor, is people are intentionally immersing into their life codes. It is intentionally immersing into the illumination that will bring the higher life. So yeah, that's been pretty loaded too. So Gina, before we get ready to wrap up, did you want to get present and see if there's, any other journal? For some reason, there does feel like there's a trinity here. There does feel like there is at least one more that maybe is, I don't know, jump off to something else, but I do feel the vibration of something. So I'll just let you be present.
The one that's just speaking to me, it's been hiding, is Impossible, an inspirational journal planner for consistently achieving the miraculous.
Okay, so let me get you to read that again, because I laughed and chuckled, and so I might have muffled up.
It's called Impossible, an inspirational journal planner for consistently achieving the miraculous.
Okay, wonderful. And since we have been actually talking about the Christ energy in a sense, and again, even with this is a context outside of religion. So impossible. So we know when we think about things being impossible and things seem like, oh, it's in dire strait, there's a whole lot or just confusion or however, but what is impossible for us is very much possible through the divine presence, and that's where we have to connect to. So Gina, I'll allow you to be present with that, and whatever comes up. Yeah.
It's time to demonstrate the power of the Most High God in your life like never before. It's time to believe that you can achieve the greater things that you've yet to access, so that you can unleash it into the world. Again, all things are impossible to those who believe. Every day tell yourself, everything, 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 yes, everything. All things are impossible because I believe.
Yes. Let the church say amen. Awesome. Oh yes, definitely. I feel the vibration. I felt there was a third, it was at least a third.
It just has almost sort of just closed the circle, really.
Yes, yes, yeah. The way, the truth, and the light.
Yeah.
You know, um, yeah, the Trinity, in a sense, is that we have to understand this has been really perfect, for sure, because even to come to start with the becoming, so hold all three of them up. And I know that may be impossible, but
Oh,
impossible.
anything's possible.
That's right, exactly. So, so I actually like the order in which you put them in, even though I know you're trying to categorize them according to what it was, but I actually like the vibration here because um, as we're talking about the light, and it's interesting because even Jesus talks about we are the light of the world, you know, and so being the light of the world, when we think about worldly conditions and things that seem off, we are connected to the world. We are all one in humanity, right?
Yeah.
But we have to be able to be those beacons of light and hope. And we have to be able to demonstrate what seems to be impossible. And through our connection, whether through prayer and intention, we bring about the impossible vibration to
Yeah.
be possible. Okay, we dispel, I should say, the impossible becomes possible. If you think about the word impossible, basically, if you break it up, it's like I'm possible, right? So
Yeah.
that's the shift. And so whether we want to say him possible or I'm possible or so, whichever resonates with people, it's the connection to the truth. And that's the thing. If you find the way, let's connect to the truth. The truth of the matter is what seems impossible. No, it is possible, but I'm possible. I am possible. And I believe I am possible because I have the connection. I have the connection to the way, the truth, and the life, which then allows me to be what? The light of the world, and then to be the hope, to others. And so I believe that this has been perfect. I don't think we've ever had a segment yet where just a few journals like that popped out, because normally it's quite a bit. So, so, so I think that
Yeah.
this was great. So, are you feeling complete in terms of the journals and just
I think that's brought it full circle. I think
I do too. I
well.
I really do. I feel that it has as well. So, so on the note of feeling, more complete, and since we did kind of come up with the core theme in terms of, being intentional about immersing into the life codes, and then bringing it back to the illumination. So let's talk a little bit quickly about what has actually been illuminated. The illumination of the truth of our divine connection, right? Because
Yes.
it's all been pointing back to that and how we now create our reality, if you sense, in a sense, we recode with the dominion, to know that we have dominion to create the divine destiny, that there no longer has to be the default, that every day or each moment, in a sense, can uniquely be crafted in this higher divine design by taking this dominion and this authority, by first of all realizing the authority that we have, realizing we are extensions of source, realizing we are created in that image, and that we need to operate from that place. So I'm sure you would co-sign on that, Gina.
Absolutely. And ultimately that's the essence of our
Mm,
life journey, isn't it? That's
yes, it is.
people talk about, our spiritual journey, but ultimately the
Mm,
spiritual journey begins and ends with you. And
absolutely.
having for some, it takes a lot of courage to stop looking to the externals to find the answers,
Mhm.
and to go into that place, that can feel lonely and unfamiliar because you've spent so
Mhm.
much time avoiding it, but it's well
Right.
worth it.
Right, exactly. And the big elephant that often is overlooked, the big elephant in the room that often is overlooked is the inner mastery,
Yeah.
and on this level. And so when we go within, instead of just continuously focusing on the outward circumstances, because the outward circumstances will give us some information, but a lot of times when we've gone within, then the reflection on the outside would then help us to be able to have some guidance and support in terms of what to do. But we just don't need to start there. We have to go within, because that's where the divinity or the source connection is within. I think a lot of times what's been kind of misinterpreted, even in religious context, is there was too much of a trying to pray to a God outside somewhere that
Yes.
felt so far away and external, source connection in that way, where it's more universal, where within, that truth becomes illuminate of that presence within, then it can help to facilitate this outward experience. And yes, there is the law of the Lord in that context, in the external reality, but you really can't fully access the whole vibration of that until you've actually made the connection within. So that's what this session basically, in a nutshell, in a sense, has really provided, is, the going in and connecting to that divine place, and then that's part of that becoming in that evolution, becoming the light and hope. Okay, the light within, the hope within, and then doing the impossible world to make it possible, demonstrating that connection. So something I want to say to this before, because Gina, I'll have you actually to close us out.
Okay.
I just want to say that others can learn more about Gina and I in the description box below. And also we'll have links to the publications that were featured today. And I also have, within there, Gina's Arthur's page for sure, and everything. And so one of the things I always love to close this segment out with, just as a reminder, and then like I said, I'll turn it over to Gina, is please always keep in mind that your divine destiny, again, isn't found in the stars or in the cards. It will be in the life codes. I want you to ultimately be blessed by what you've heard today. And just the reminder of that is look into your life. Your life is constantly speaking. And when you can embrace and embody the practice of intentional journaling, it's going to bring forth out of you all that you need to know how to create or design, I should say, your life at this phase. So all the publications that we have featured today are their intentional journals, and they do have prompts and triggers or the sacred space for you to be able to discover that for yourself within those life codes. So Gina, of course, I always want to thank you so much, because these sessions are always so brilliant and divinely guided. And so I just appreciate you. And now I turn it over to you for final words.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for your wisdom and your guidance. For those who are listening, AliNICOLE's my mentor, and I have learned so much. And in a sense, that's the essence of how I want to finish this is, we are all on a journey, and you can choose to be in your rocking chair, rocking away, spending a lot of energy and blaming everything around you that your life is not as you feel it ought to be. Or you can take control, you can take dominion over your life and recognize that you are a divine being, that you are in the image of God, the source, whatever you want to call it. And when you don't own that, there is a disconnect and a sense of dis-ease, which so often becomes disease. That if you want to live life fully, you want to live a happy, fulfilled and successful life, then own your divinity.
Yes.
But recognize that it takes the courage to look inside, and day by day to see that, that you have so much, the him possible is possible, or the her possible is possible.
That's right.
And use this as the as the spark that takes you and accelerates you along your journey. So thanks so much for being with us. Thank you, AliNICOLE.
Thank you.
And we'd love to know what you think. You know, leave comments in the comment box. But
Mhm.
do take charge and become the leader of your own life and the
Yes.
owner of your own divinity. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye now.